Hey guys, hello and welcome to the video that we have prepared to give you an update on the unemployment situation in India. Before we kick things off, let me introduce you to the team that has prepared this video. We represent study group G6, which consists of Anirudh, Manaswini, Pankaj, Sumati, and myself, Akul. Let's start off by giving you a brief outline on what we will cover in this video. Firstly, we will discuss the root causes for the high unemployment level currently prevailing in India. Then, we will explore some actions or recommendations that can be implemented to get the country out of this situation. Lastly, we will list out the criteria or benchmarks that can be used to check if our recommendations achieve the desired outcomes. So, how severe is the unemployment situation in India? A Business Standard article recently claimed that India's unemployment rate of 6.1% is at a 45-year high according to an NSSO survey. As the unemployment rate breaches a 4-decade high figure, it is the urban youth who suffers the most. According to the government's periodic labor force survey, every sixth urban male youth aged between 15 to 29 was unemployed. Quite naturally, such a situation acts as a drag on India's economic growth and entails negative consequences for society as a whole.
Now, let's look at the causes of unemployment. Firstly, population explosion. Currently, population in India is growing at a rate of 2.5% per annum, and nearly 4 million people are joining the labor force every year. Also, India have been seeing high population growth rate since 1950s and is expected to become the most populous country by 2024. The constant rise in population and the addition of people to labor force leads to higher unemployment. Secondly, the slow growth rate of manufacturing sector. According to a report by CMIE, the index of industrial production has decreased, indicating a decline of manufacturing sector. Given that manufacturing sector is the major source of employment, particularly for semi-skilled labor in India, this decline has led to increased unemployment. Lastly, ineffective government schemes. Government schemes, particularly the aid-based schemes such as Manrega, led to increased attrition from agriculture sector, declining productivity. The increase dependent on aid leads to higher unemployment. As we have seen the causes for unemployment, we can now see the recommended solutions. Firstly, for population control. Given the limited amount of nation's resources and potential for economic growth, it's not possible to create enough employment in par with the increase in labor force. Then how do we solve the problem? As we observed in other developing countries like China, population control measures will significantly improve employment levels. We can adapt the family planning schemes like two-child policy. So far, only 11 states in India have adopted this. Also, awareness and access to contraception options will deter unplanned pregnancies, especially in underdeveloped sections of the society that have higher birth rates. Implementation of family planning schemes can be done through awareness drives and consequences in the form of withholding government benefits for more than two children.
Our second recommendation is to increase the IIP or the factory output. The government should focus on increasing the growth rate of manufacturing sector as it will lead to job creation. They need to increase the foreign investment in manufacturing sector, particularly in large-scale manufacturing like China. This way, the country can benefit from becoming a major manufacturing hub for developed countries and generate more employment. Growth in new cities and smart city projects will increase the job creation of both skilled and unskilled labor. Sectors such as construction and IT industry in the new city will ensure large-scale employment generation. Structural reforms in areas of tax and administration and simplifying bureaucratic processes will facilitate the growth of business. Coming to the third point, the government should shift from aid-based to employment schemes. The government should focus on promoting employment within the local economies at both urban and rural levels by introducing favorable policies. Making the beneficiary dependent on aid should be avoided as poor human capital impacts long-term economic growth and in turn causes further unemployment problems. Aid-based schemes such as Narega can be made into an incentive-based model where the incentives tied to acquiring new skills that promote the productivity of the individual and increase their employability. Equipping farmers with latest R&D like weather-resistant crops rather than loans and subsidies will lead to increased productivity. To increase rural employment, policies should be created to establish formal village enterprises that promote local economy. This will also ensure reduced migration from rural to urban India. Lastly, they should convert Tier 3 cities into CES and raise tenders for which infrastructure companies from India and abroad can participate, thereby leading to more employment in both the infrastructure and construction industry.
Now that we've looked at the recommendations to combat unemployment, we should look at the success criteria against which we can measure the effectiveness of this framework. As India hits 6.1% unemployment, it is facing the highest unemployment in 45 years. Such a rate should be considered substandard when we measure the success of our recommendations. For India to achieve its full growth potential, it must at least meet the average targets of 3.5% in rural and 6% in urban areas, which would mean 4.5% overall unemployment in the country. India's success in battling unemployment would be considered exceptional at the rates of 2% and 3% in rural and urban areas respectively, as this would mean an overall rate of approximately 2.3%, which would take us close to the natural rate of unemployment, which is the minimum level of unemployment our country would face due to certain people not on the lookout for jobs. Measuring progress of our recommendations is essential. This will allow us to identify any gaps and improvement opportunities in the framework. This should be done periodically to align the recommendations and ensure meeting our employment goals and